Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me what will your legacy be? Yeah.
1 week left until the playoffs in Rhode Island. We have a Week 7 post-game show here for you guys, and some really good games in Week 7. A lot to look forward to in Week 8, with some seeds still up for grabs. A couple teams control their own destiny. We'll get into that, and we do know one thing. The top 4 seeds are locked in because they all ended up actually winning in Week 7, and that 5 seed already has 3 losses. The top 4 teams have 1 loss or no loss, so that's math. That's the easy math. They can't lose twice in 1 week. So the top 4 are locked in, and those 4 will get a bye. We'll kind of preview that as we go through each game, and then also look ahead to who they play in the final week of the regular season. Let's get to Week 7 a little bit. We have Matt standing by. We'll start with the closest game from Week 7, which both teams came in 3-3. So forget the top 4 for a second. That was going to be a big mess in the middle, depending on how this game went between the Halfway Crooks and the Air Mambas. It is the Halfway Crooks pulling it out 86-84. I had to check the score. I knew it was a 2-point game. I didn't know the numbers. Only 4 guys for the Halfway Crooks. The Air Mambas had 6 or 7? 6? Maybe? Yeah, 6. And it was a close game down the stretch. Let's get to Matt right away on this one, and then I'll kind of give everyone the playoff implications of that game. But Matt, a close game. I hate to do it. Some missed free throws by both teams, but noticeably by the Air Mambas. We'll pick it up here. Close game back and forth. I'll get to the stats too, because 50% from 3, I checked right after the game. 50% from 3, and the Halfway Crooks made 18. So that's what kept them in the game, that's for sure. 30 seconds left. The Air Mambas have the ball in a tied game where they can take the last shot. There's no shot clock, and they lose by 2. So what happened?
Yeah, I just didn't think they got off a clean look at the end. I felt they could have went for a mid-range shot or maybe at the rim, just because you guys were missing Jared. Or not Jared, what's his name again? Jeff.
Yep.
They're 2 big guys. And so I thought they could have tried to take advantage with that paint presence, and they took a tough shot from outside and didn't fall.
Yeah, and so 30 seconds left. They have the ball. They get fouled, I'm pretty sure, and it's Luis Ramirez one of the times going to the line. He ends up missing them both in a tied game. I think they get a rebound. And then Nick...
I think it was a rebound and a foul, I think.
Yeah. So Nick Lemoyne, whether he was fouled or not, that was the look with 30 seconds left. Sorry, the Halfway Crooks then get fouled. Jared Hansen splits them. So the Halfway Crooks are by 1. The Mambas come down with under 20 seconds left. They get fouled on an offensive rebound. Miss them both. Then I get the rebound, thank goodness, and call timeout. We get it in. Jared Hansen splits them again. So summarizing all of that kind of gets to what Matt was talking about. 2 seconds left. The Mambas advance the ball down by 2. So they had a couple chances here to get any type of points and kind of get the win, and unable to do so. They get a good look from 3, I will say. That was a pretty clean look for Nick Lemoyne, who, for the Air Mambas, finished with 30 and 6 threes. So usually he's attacking the basket a lot more. Was still doing that. I'm not going that route. But 6 threes for him is like, all right, now he's going to hit threes too, right? And that was a huge part for the Air Mambas offense. No Aiden Dozos in this game, so he kind of had to pick up a lot of the slack. Mario Valerio at 21. They shot 12 of 33 from 3 and out-rebounded the Crooks 43-30. And despite that, it was the Halfway Crooks. Charles Correa, 9 threes, 34 points. Jared Hansen with 20, missed 5 free throws. I know he'll hate, he won't even hate me saying that because he's mad he missed 5 free throws. Forget us talking about it. And Kevin DeCina, 17 and 7. So really, 4 guys, no subs, and it's the Halfway Crooks improving to 4-3. They now control their own destiny with a full game lead over the 6th seed, which is the Providence Defense and Air Mambas. And if it is the Air Mambas and Halfway Crooks, the tiebreaker, which I'll talk about, is head-to-head. So that game not only gives the Crooks a game advantage, but also the head-to-head tiebreaker, should we need it, against the Air Mambas. The Air Mambas fall to 3-4 and are now tied with Providence Defense heading into this last week. And I'll kind of break down all these tiebreakers at the end. We'll save it for the end. But now they're in that 6-7, and they could use a win to separate themselves heading into that last season, because the 6 plays the 11, which is a much better matchup, whether it's Muffin Tops, Velocity, All Talk, rather than a 7 and 10 or an 8 and 9, which is kind of still where the Air Mambas. There's too many teams to kind of have exact ranges. We know the top 4. The halfway crooks are kind of right now alone in 5th, and if they win, they get the 5th seed, and that's it. And then it's Air Mambas, Providence Defense, All Waves, All Talk Sports get their second win this week, and the Road Dogs are still 2 and 5. So all of those teams between 6 to 10 could end up 2 and 6, or could end up 3 and 5, and then all tied, and it comes down to head-to-head or point differential, which I'll get to in a second. But that's the halfway crooks pulling it out in a close one. I mentioned the Road Dogs. They fall to the Skyhawks. Let's get to them. Skyhawks, who are now winners of 6 straight. The Skyhawks, 84. Road Dogs, 77. Kareem Cooper led the way for the Road Dogs with 28. But again, Noah James, 37 points, 5 threes. Really the leader of that team. I love Omar Rahman. He's awesome, and they're all a bunch of good dudes, a nice addition to the league. But Omar Rahman, 19 and 7 rebounds. I can list the entire team. They play as a team. They were hitting threes, and they get that stat for you. 9 of 16 from 3 for the Skyhawks in a game that was competitive, where they needed some of those to fall on some driving kicks to kind of hold off the Road Dogs, who brought it. They brought it, and they end up falling to 2 and 5. The Road Dogs do. The Skyhawks are 6 and 1 ever since losing to the Game Breakers in week 1, who they are tied with at 6 and 1. So that head-to-head may and probably will end up mattering, because it is the Skyhawks and Washed Up Boys who get ready to play in the last game, 9 o'clock on Tuesday night of the season, which we will know if it's for the 2, 3, or 4 seed, but the lowest any of those teams can be is 4. Matt, 2 seconds on the Skyhawks, and really just 6 in a row. And we haven't mentioned it all year. We've mentioned them winning, but not how many. And to string together 6 in a row, looking to make it 7, keep it rolling in the playoffs, that's impressive for any team in this league.
Yeah, their only loss came to a very impressive Game Breakers team too, and it was a week 1 loss also. So they've come and brought it every single week. And also Noah James, I feel like he's always just shooting the lights out almost every game. I mean, he had 37 points, made 5 and 9 from 3, and the team altogether also shot 56% from 3. So, I mean, when the threes are falling at that rate, it's pretty hard to lose.
Yeah, and I've said it to them. I've said it on this show. Not the biggest team, but Zeke, we've talked about him. He's like, I'm the best rebounder in the league. Well, he's been showing that. Omar Rahman helps attack the basket and kind of can play some post defense for them. If they're going to make these threes, that's one way to overcome some of that size, and we've heard it from the Game Breakers. They're like, we're just going to shoot a ton of threes, and we have some size, but screw it. We're going to take all these threes, and they'll fall, and they have. For the Skybreakers, for Skyhawks, and the Game Breakers. Like, we can combine those 2 teams. That'd be scary. So it is the Skyhawks, 6 and 1. I mentioned who they play in week 7. We'll get to that in a second. The Road Dogs fall to 2 and 5, and now are tied in the standings with All Talk Sports and the All Waves with 2 wins. And then we'll talk about kind of week 8 in a second for the Road Dogs, because they can get a 3rd win. And then if the Air Mambas lose, both teams would be 3 and 5. And those teams played, we'll get to that in a second, because all the tiebreaker stuff is fun. But the first tiebreaker is head-to-head. And if more than one team is tied and a team didn't beat all of the teams they're tied with, it's then point differential, which I have the math going for us on the side over here. But let's get to the next game. Speaking of the Game Breakers, we talked about them kind of welcoming the Skyhawks to the league in week 1. They took care of Providence defense, and that's strong because Providence defense made it a game, but it is the Game Breakers also improving to 6 and 1. Behind Gian Abidjan, they had 4 guys. David DePino with 20 and 21 rebounds. Yes, 20 and 21. Gian Abidjan, 36 points, 3 of 15 from 3. A good amount of free throws and 8 rebounds. It is the Game Breakers, 74. Providence defense, 66. Juan Jimenez, 21 points. Jacob Darber, 15. And Jesus, 7 of 16. So we talked about Jesus Thames being able to get to the rim. He's had very effective shooting nights. Not as easy in week 7 for him. So that's something I expect him to turn around. But he still had 18 rebounds, 14 and 18 for Jesus. Notably 38% shooting for Providence defense and under 23% from 3. The Game Breakers made 11 threes, but around 27% from three, and they shot 42%. A very physical game, Matt. You can give a couple sentences, and really a game I was looking forward to. It lived up to it. I mean, the Game Breakers were in control even without Hachi Amini, Jose Mercado, Charles Alexander, and didn't really have any backups, and were still able to remain in control, it felt like.
Yeah, with them missing a lot of those key players, like definitely makes it a lot different of a game for them, especially Providence defense. It's in their name. They bring defensive play to every single game. And I just really came down to Gianna Vizian's play, 36 points. That's a huge impact on the game. Such a not a huge low scoring game, but definitely one of the lower scoring games of the week. And I just thought with four guys being able to pull out a game like that, especially missing Jose and Amini.
Yep.
I mean, those are two huge players for them, and playing with four guys, that's a very impressive win for them.
Yeah, playing with four guys, it's not fun. I know from experience. It is the Game Breakers, like I talked about, 6-1. They actually control their own destiny. If they win in Week 8, when they take on the Air Mambas, who have things to play for as well. If they win in Week 8, because the Game Breakers had beaten the Skyhawks in Week 1 and the Washed Up Boys throughout the season, if they win, they hold that tiebreaker no matter who's tied with them and get that 2 seed, which would then leave the Washed Up Boys versus the Skyhawks, which we'll know going into that game. The winner gets the 3, the loser gets the 4, and it's almost, if you're looking ahead to the semifinals, which side you're on, right? Because Lob City's the one, and they again control their own destiny. They're almost locked in, but not exactly. The tiebreakers get weird, but they did beat the Game Breakers. They didn't play the Skyhawks or Washed Up Boys, so the head-to-head wouldn't matter. But if Lob City wins, they're the one. If the Game Breakers win, the lowest they can be is 2. And then it's Washed Up and Skyhawks battling for 3 and 4. For Providence defense, we talked about it. They're right now tied at 3 and 4 with the Air Mambas. They didn't play the Air Mambas. So right now it's kind of point differential, and the Air Mambas point differential is 106 to the positive heading into Week 8, and Providence defense's point differential is plus 78. So if the Road Dogs lose, because if another team gets thrown in, then it's all messed up, right? But if Providence defense and Air Mambas are tied, Providence defense would have to win in Week 8 by 30 more than the Air Mambas do. Okay, so we'll update you next week on all the tiebreakers. We'll have the bracket, we'll have the standings, but that's kind of what Providence defense find themselves in, having lost to the Game Breakers, and Providence defense in Week 8 gets Lob City to continue this tough stretch for them, and it's testing them, that's for sure. Let's get to another team that is right there. Did I completely miss the All Waves? Oh, God. Well, we might be, the All Waves 2 and 5. I don't know their point differential, I'll be honest, but they fall in Week 7 to the Washed Up Boys. Let's talk about that game. I have more math to do. The All Waves 2 and 5, they fall to the Washed Up Boys 89-60. It was a big third quarter and, really tied after one quarter. The All Waves kind of had a game plan. Let's attack inside. It was all Washed Up Boys from that point on. Picking up the pace, as Hendel LaRolle talked about in that post-game interview, kind of figuring out what the All Waves wanted to do, which was attack down low with their size. Washed Up Boys countered, and then there was really no counter back from the All Waves, and that's kind of how that game flow went. But again, the Washed Up Boys have shown at 6-1 they can adjust, and they can hit some threes, 12 of 25, so nearly 50% for the Washed Up Boys, 56% shooting from the floor, so behind Hendel LaRolle's 38, and he was 6 of 7 from 3. Took over. He took over at points in that game. Anything on the Washed Up Boys, Matt, as they kind of get ready for that Week 8 showdown with the Skyhawks?
Yeah, they've definitely been one of my favorite teams to watch this year. They're definitely always charismatic. They're a funny team to watch. When they're playing very hard too, they're a very tough team to beat. I mean, next week is going to be a huge matchup with them against the Skyhawks, probably the matchup of the week in my opinion. And I just love the way that Leroy Brown plays too. He's a big physical player. He's tough to stop when he's on his game, and I think they're a very tough team going into the playoffs to beat.
Yeah, and we talked about it for the All Waves. Jake Ashstetter returned 16 points. Needed to have a huge game, and it's almost they didn't have enough, no Josh DePina, which would have helped for the All Waves. They needed to be clicking on all cylinders from the beginning to kind of keep up with what the washed up boys like to do. Nick Montanino 14-9, and so the All Waves fall to 2-5. They are in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mess of teams with 3 wins right now. The All Waves could get their 3rd win in week 8 when they look to take on All Talk Sports, who are also 2-5. We're going to get to that game in a second. So that game has some seeding implications right there, head to head. Really 3 wins. You need 3 wins to get up to that 6 seed because 2 teams already have 3 wins, like we talked about entering week 8 in the Air Mambas and Providence defense. We've talked enough about the washed up boys. I'll get to that. We're going to preview that game really quick at the end with the Skyhawks and kind of their point differential. But the washed up boys, 6-1, and their lone loss, the washed up boys. I should have did my homework. Matt, do you know the answer to the question? They beat the Road Dogs. Oh, crap. Wow, it was recently. The washed up boys. Oh, they lost to the Game Breakers. My bad. Duh, I mentioned it. Their lone loss to the Game Breakers, who are also 6-1. All right, let's keep it moving. We have a lot of scoring coming up, but first, and a record by Lob City. But first, it is All Talk Sports getting their 2nd win over the Muffin Tops. 95-51, All Talk Sports, led by Justin Bianchi's 24-11, Steven Soulier 23-7. Wow, double doubles for Nick Ricky and Daniel Hollowell. So, yeah, I mean, everything clicking for All Talk Sports. The Muffin Tops score 51, so shout out to them. Frank Smith again, 13-14. Matthew Dagnall, 13-9 for them. Let's kind of, quickly, All Talk Sports, their point differential at 2-5 is 43 to the positive, so that's good. This win helped, and then they also beat Velocity 112-60, so that'll help your point differential big time. The Road Dogs, who are also 2-5, have a negative 3-point differential because when they won in week 1, it was by 40. They then won by 3, and then had some very, very close losses by 2 points twice. And so that's kind of the point differential story. But All Talk Sports, Matt, you can kind of preview this one quickly, looking to take down the All Waves in week 8 to kind of jump, and that would put them 6, 7, 8. 8 or 9 still, but they were kind of in that 10 spot all year. What do you see from All Talk Sports and kind of looking to, hey, get a win in the playoffs? It's anybody's game.
Yeah, that's definitely another huge game next week, a very close game I think it's going to be. I really think All Talk Sports could definitely come out with a win here, though, because I think they've been playing very well. And also in almost every game they've lost, it's been a very competitive game. They put up a lot of points. They play hard defense. So I would not sleep on these guys going into the playoffs either, because I feel like if a night can go their way, if a team has a bad shooting night and misses some guys to injury maybe, they could definitely pull out a sneaky win or something.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot to play for. Will definitely be a tough out in the playoffs. I will pick the All Waves in week 8, and in that scenario, not to be the bearer of bad news for All Talk Sports, they would be 9 or 10 and would most likely be playing potentially the All Waves again, maybe the Road Dogs, maybe Providence defense, maybe the Air Mambas. It makes for a good first-round matchup. Either way, whether they're the 10, whether they're the 7, 8, 9, again, those teams all kind of play each other. Those are going to be 2 very close games that can go either way. They're not really much of an upset. I know 10-7, that's not much of an upset, especially this year. So regardless of what happens in week 8, they need to be ready for that first round, whoever they get, which we'll figure out next week. One more game and some history, as if Lob City hasn't done that enough. Lob City 179. That is correct. 179 points. They set the record previously held by the Alliance from our first season, fall 2017, which was an earlier version of this Lob City team that has continued to kind of mold itself and dominate this league. They win 179-88 over Velocity. So Velocity has the 1 win, and they take on the Halfway Crooks. If they lose that game, they'll be in that 11 seed. If they win, it makes it even more interesting in week 8, Velocity. But for Lob City, 7-0, they control their own destiny. We talked about it. Lob City gets Providence defense in week 8. Not that we're going to pick an upset here, but Lob City's basically getting ready for the playoffs now. I'm excited to watch that one. I expect Lob City to win. That's how this works. They've earned that. But even looking at that one quickly, Matt, let's do stats really quick because 179 points. Joe Secatore, 59 and 8. Kavai Simpson, 50. So 2 players score over 50. Nuri Mahmood, 34 and 12. Cody Crawford with 28. And shout out Cody with a great poster. Just known for his shooting, but he got one. I know he was pumped about it. Ashton Alcock, 31 and 5 threes. And David Del Santo, 22 points himself. But it's always tough against Lob City. So, Matt, let's look ahead to that one really quick and kind of wrap this up in a second. But Lob City, Providence defense, what's the key for you in that one?
The key's got to be the defense from Providence defense. If they can try to lock them down, and they got to make their shots too. They got to make the shots at the end of the day. And Lob City also plays great defense at the rim, very hard to score on. And Providence defense, although they haven't shot the ball well from 3 all season, you never know what may happen in a Week 8 and a must-win game for them. And I think it could be a very close game, like a lot closer than people may think, but still have to go with Lob City there.
Yeah, again, they've earned it. So Lob City Providence defense Tuesday at 8:15. Tuesday's loaded again. Game Breakers Air Mambas kick off Tuesday night at 7:15, and we talked about it. The Washed Up Boys and Skyhawks end the regular season on Tuesday night. Road Dogs Muffin Tops kick off Week 8. Velocity, Halfway Crooks, and All Waves All Talk Sports at 9 on Monday. So let's get into this really quick and kind of go over some of the playoff stuff again, and that's how we'll end it. And I'll kind of get Matt's sleeper team so he can start preparing while I kind of go through some of the standings right now. But we talked about it. The top 4 are locked in. Lob City 7-0, control their own destiny. They win, they're the 1 seed. If they lose, it gets a little interesting because multiple teams could be 7-1. The Game Breakers at 2 right now. If they win, they're the 2 seed no matter what because they beat the Washed Up Boys and Skyhawks head-to-head. So whoever wins that game would also be 7-1, but the Game Breakers beat them. So the Game Breakers control it for 2, and that leaves the Washed Up Boys potentially still in play for the 1 seed because it would be a point differential mess if Lob City was to lose, and then every team, Game Breakers and Washed Up Boys would have to win. So they're still in play for the 1 seed, but most likely playing for 2, 3, or 4. The lowest any of those teams can go is 4. And right now, Lob City has 161 point differential. Game Breakers are at 144. Washed Up Boys 61 and Skyhawks 75. So really, it's Game Breakers or Lob City for 1, because even if stuff gets crazy, the point differential is a little too high for either of those teams to get any lower than that. So Washed Up Boys, Skyhawks really for the 2, 3, or 4 seed, which will be huge. Moving on down. Let me get back to my spot here. The Halfway Crooks at 4-3. They take on Velocity. If they win, they'll be the only team with 5 wins. Like, teams have more than that, but the only team with exactly 5 wins. Locking up that 5 seed, they'd play the 12 in the first round of the playoffs in that scenario. If they lose, it can then open up the teams below them, which are Providence Defense and Air Mambas, to then also be 4-4 and get up. But Crooks control their own destiny. It's then Providence Defense and the Air Mambas both at 3-4 like I talked about. They didn't play each other. So again, Air Mambas 106 point differential. Providence Defense right now at 78. Where it gets interesting is when we get to the Road Dogs, right, who take on the Muffin Tops. So we would expect them to get their 3rd win, and they would kind of join Providence Defense or the Air Mambas if those teams lose. So add them in. And the Road Dogs did not play Providence Defense, but they beat the Mambas in a close one. So there's your tiebreaker stuff there. We talked about the All Waves. They get ready to take on All Talk Sports. If they win, they could also have 3 wins. And so then that would put them potentially as high as 6. The Road Dogs right now have a negative 3 point differential. All Talk Sports at 43 to the positive. And I know I screwed up by not having the All Waves one, but they were in close games all year, so I cannot imagine their point differential being either way plus or minus 20, and I would assume it's to the plus. Just how this usually goes, but it's not a big number, so they're going to be right in that mix. And then that kind of gives us All Waves, All Talk, Road Dogs, all kind of in that 2 and 3 win conversation. Velocity at 1-6 right now at 11, and the Muffin Tops at 12. Every team makes the playoffs, and the top 4 get a bye. Okay, enough of that. Standings are on the site. We'll be recapping everything next week on the postgame show. We got a minute left. Matt, you're a surprise team to make a Final Four. Okay, this kind of opens it up. Sure, not every team can probably realistically win it all, even though it is one game. So technically every team could win it. But which team can kind of break up the top 4 of Lob City, Game Breakers, Skyhawks, Washed Up Boys, who, if that's the Final Four, that makes sense, right? They've separated themselves. They're the top 4 seeds. They've been the best 4 teams all year consistently. What team not named those 4, based on kind of how the bracket could fall, because that's going to matter, can break into that top 4? Who you got?
It's a pretty tough choice, I'd say, between the Crooks and the Air Mambas, just because both teams are, when they're fully healthy, very tough to play. And this week they were missing, forget his name, but number 4, a very
Aiden,
a very impactful player for them. But if they can shoot the lights out, it's a very tough team to beat. And then the Halfway Crooks, who are also at full strength, are a very tough team to beat. Jared is when he's on his game, and it's a huge thing for you guys. And I think either team could break that top 4 up in a playoff matchup.
The Air Mambas have been in a ton of games, and have played a lot of teams close, notably Lob City in overtime. The All Waves, they beat by 6. The Road Dogs, they lost by 3. The Halfway Crooks, they lost by 2. I mean, the Air Mambas have been there. What I wanted to look up, because the Air Mambas lost in Week 7, they could be a 7 seed, they could be an 8 seed, they could be a 9 seed, and that's where it gets tricky, because picking a team like the Air Mambas, sure, not knowing the matchups, right? But the 9 seed would play the 8, and they'd get Lob City in the quarters, the top seed, if it stands, right? Where like the Halfway Crooks, because of that win, and this is the one time I'll do this, kind of as the 5 or really the 6, they can't go below 7, but most likely 5 or 6. That then gives them one of the top 4 teams in the quarterfinals, but it'll be someone not named Lob City or the Game Breakers, right? And that is kind of the path to most easily, and again, those teams are good. They've played well all year, but it's much easier to kind of predict possibly one game going your way when you're not playing the Game Breakers or Lob City, who have been in these playoffs before, right? So just path-wise, you're looking at the 6th seed as well. Very similar path, right? You would expect them to win, get to the quarters, and they're playing most likely the Washed Up Boys or the Skyhawks. I'm not knocking anybody. Don't use it against me. But that's kind of where. So those spots, right? So we're talking 5 seed, 6 seed, and that means 11 or 12. So really the 5 and 6, that's what teams are playing for in Week 8. It's not going to be easy, but that's the path to get into the Final Four. And then, of course, you're playing a good team, and who knows what can happen. We've seen crazier things, right? So we'll end it on this. Matt, very good job. We went a little long, but playoffs, 1 week away, 1 game left for everybody, and I'd hate to play the Halfway Crooks. Matt, good job on the postgame show, and everybody, thanks for watching.
Thank you.